to kind of get thrown into that, and woke up like kind of hearing sirens and then missiles coming in, and then all that was kind of a whirlwind. And then about 2 days later, I was back in the United States, and then
Hello, everyone. Another episode here of Ordinary Excellence. I have the pleasure of having Gabe Segal on here, a former teammate of mine. We grew up playing in Bethesda for many, many years here. He's gone on to do like excellent stuff soccer-wise, just going to play at Stanford, overseas, NYCFC in the MLS. So for people who don't know, the top division of professional soccer here in the U.S., and now at Houston Dynamo. I think for this episode, and just for some context, kind of had to combine last month and this month just with like personal stuff that I had going on, just not enough time. So made sure I got a guest worthy of 2 months here and Gabe. But yeah, I think this is a great episode here, overarching, just like, holding yourself to like a high standard. Gabe's always done that in soccer. And even more importantly is like he's always had high expectations from coaches, I'm sure from parents, definitely from other players that he's played with, to perform. And then the reality is, you have to be able to handle those expectations that you're given. And so I think it's a good conversation of just when people are expecting, results from you, how to handle that pressure. And then overall, just a conversation of like the reality and the positives and the negatives of professional soccer. But I think, Gabe, just to start off here, giving like the audience a little bit of background about yourself and where you are today. I know I gave some, but would be helpful here.
yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. Excited to be here. But yeah, as you said, lifelong and youth player in Bethesda, pretty much all throughout. So I think Elias and I met when we were 6, something like that.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, way back when. And kind of that continued all the way through until we went to college. But yeah, I played for Bethesda growing up, starting 13, 14. Started getting in with the youth national teams for the U.S., which would have me travel a bunch to different countries and states and all that. And that continued through until college, and then went to Stanford for three years, and then after that, I went to Germany for half a year and played with Cologne's second team. And then from there, I went to New York for about a year, then a brief stint after that in Israel, as I was supposed to be on loan there for a year, and then the whole war started while I was there after only about a month. So that was quite the experience as well. And then after that, got traded to Houston, and that's where I've been for the past year and a half or so. So that's kind of been the journey so far, but obviously a lot packed in there.
Yeah. And thanks for the background there. I think if we start from the beginning, it would be kind of interesting for myself and the audience to hear a bit about like where like starting to play, like how that came about. Obviously, the audience, a lot of people probably don't know, but your dad very heavily involved in the professional realm, in the agent side. So would be interested to hear like kind of where that spark came about when you were a kid to play.
For sure. So yeah, as you said, my dad worked and still works in soccer and has been an agent my whole life. So that was always an interesting dynamic when I was young, because he obviously is working with professional players day in and day out, and he kind of was able to use that experience to kind of instill in me the things that it took for those guys to make it to the level they're at. So I was definitely privileged in the sense that I had the insight into what it takes to become a pro. And he had me ever since I could walk, pretty much, with a ball. And I from then on, I put in a ton of time. And at first it was kind of him giving me that head start in terms of telling me when I was young, like, you got to go do this and do that. And I would say probably at the very beginning, I wasn't even that excited to do all of that. But very quickly after that, I started getting better, seeing the results. And then from there, it kind of just took off. So I pretty much, since I have any memory and could walk, I was putting in a lot of time into soccer.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And I think, in terms of that, I think it's good to hear that you had that influence, because I think a lot of players that do end up becoming top players, they have kind of a parental figure who is able to guide them in that sense. So I think that's
Sure.
definitely great to hear. I also think you had a lot of like it kind of at Bethesda for some context here. I think it was pretty clear like you were, the one that was like supposed to make it, right? Like you were definitely had like that image. And I'm wondering, like, did that come with what type of pressure was that? You were on the national team, right? The only guy on our team that was on the national team. So you were a national figure, top drawer, top 100 player there. What type of pressure, if any, did you feel from like coaches, from like the national team, and even like, professional ranks? Like, did you ever consider, not going to college and potentially, you were with DC for like GA, you had made your debut for Loudon before even going to college, like stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you lay it out like that, yeah, there was a lot of different voices and eyes on me from a young age, and I think there's definitely the side of that where you can look at it as pressure and kind of a negative thing, but I think I never. I think at some point I got used to it, and I also never really thought of it like that. Instead, I was kind of doing this whole thing for me. And I knew that I just knew from both the kind of the guidance I got from my dad, from my family, from coaches like Coach Phillip, and other people who I trusted. I just knew the one thing that you need to consistently be doing is the things that are in your control. And that's kind of the name of the game. And it always was what I focused on. And I think what I credit with getting me to this point is that there's all these different distractions and noises and thoughts about what you should be doing and all that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, it's really just what is in your control.
In terms of another part that I kind of want to touch on before talking about college was, did you ever have thoughts of like, and this is kind of a two-part question. Did you ever have thoughts of like maybe foregoing that to play professionally, as like, players like Gio Reyna, et cetera, have taken that route, and some it's worked out for great, some it has not. Did you ever think about that? What was your ultimate decision to, go to Stanford instead of like trying that route, or maybe going overseas at a younger age? That's kind of the first part. And then second would be like, if you could go back in time, would you make that same decision?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think I definitely could have had the opportunity to do something like that. I was training with DC United's first team and kind of involved over there, even though I was with Bethesda. And I think what it came down to, one was once again the guidance and the foresight that my dad had through his job of seeing so many players that were talented young, and then it didn't quite work out for whatever reason. And I think there's just so much uncertainty and things that aren't even in your control when you kind of go into the professional world, that taking the, I don't want to call it the safer option, but it is, with going to college and having kind of something to fall back on if what for whatever reason soccer didn't work out. That was kind of what I was most comfortable with, putting myself in the best position, not just for my career, but for the rest of my life. I thought that going to Stanford would give me kind of the best flexibility, and I still believed in myself even then. With going, although it made the path probably a lot harder, I still believed that I would be able to achieve that dream of becoming pro afterwards.
And you did. So yeah, but it makes sense. I mean, that's kind of the same thought process I would have, but it's definitely, I think when you look at like, for example, my situation, it's a no brainer, go to college, right? I wasn't like good enough. Right. But for you, it's definitely a decision. You were at that level where you could sign a a first team deal and get a homegrown. So good to kind of hear that. But yeah, I agree with you. It's definitely the smart decision to take. And, sometimes you look at it and some players end up like Gio Reyna and such, and then some don't. So
Yeah,
it's
and
kind of
that yeah, that's the thing I'd say is that I think a lot of people see the success stories, but people don't talk about the non-success stories, you know?
and there's way more non-success stories. But
It's
yeah. So, and then I think something that would be interesting, and we've had conversations over the years about it, but I'm sure a lot of people watching don't really have any information on this. What was your main decision for, because you had many, many offers. What was your main decision for like choosing Stanford?
Yeah, I think it came down to kind of along that path of that I wanted to set myself up the best for after soccer too, because when you look at it, if all goes right, you're still only playing soccer until like 35 years old, something like that, and you
Yeah.
still get the rest of your life. So obviously, I had known from various sources the school that Stanford is, and its reputation academically. So I just knew that I wanted to combine kind of the best academics with the best soccer that I could. And when I committed at the time to Stanford, they'd won two national championships in a row and then ended up winning a third right after that. So I was like, what better could I do than a program that is winning national championships and has the academic reputation it does. So I kind of, I definitely heard out all these other schools and was definitely interested in a number of others, but at the end of the day, Stanford was kind of always the school and program that I wanted to go to.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I guess two, and then another one, national championships. I mean, most teams aren't getting one, so that definitely makes sense. And then obviously the academics. I mean, Stanford is up there, with the Ivies and whatnot. So definitely makes a lot of sense. Just curious to hear, a little bit about your time at Stanford, how each season went. Outside of soccer, how it was. Big lessons you learned there, and ultimately, what prompted you to leave early.
Yeah, so my experience there, I look back on it quite positively. Um, And so my freshman year came in, was able to score a number of goals, and we made the Final Four before getting knocked out by our friend Aiden Rocha in Georgetown. So that was a positive experience. Scored some more my sophomore year, and then my junior year was a little bit of a dip. I was both dealing with injuries and then also just inconsistent performances. I felt like, but I still was able to. I guess I'll get to what made me leave after. But yeah, when I look back at my time at Stanford, I'm so grateful for it. Not only with the kind of the soccer it was, but I've made so many lifelong friends that are like-minded people that like the as you said, the whole basis of this podcast is kind of digging and working hard and overcoming things. And I feel like the friends that I made there are pretty similar in that sense, and we bond over that. And the program itself is and I knew this going in, but you don't know until you get there. It's very demanding, and the coach there, Jeremy Gunn, um, holds a very high standard, and I think that's something that we all have left the program, and we're thankful for kind of the mindset that he instilled in us. We learned how to work harder than we ever thought was possible, I would say, and it really is a test of really figuring out and pushing your limits and what your mind thinks that you're capable of. You can do more than that, and that came with a lot of tough days and some pain and all that, but at the end of the day we all grew significantly from it, and not just from a soccer sense, but I think the mindset that we came away from there with will serve us and has already served us well, for kind of all facets of life, considering that life is full of challenges and things that are thrown at you, and I think just being able to deal with adversity and overcome and keep moving forward is the growth mindset, and that's a super important thing. But I guess to answer the second part of your question, why I ended up leaving early, I think you know this yourself, how hard it is kind of to go from college to the professional level, and you kind of are one of many in that way of that it's tough, and it's sometimes, to be honest, you're frowned upon for going to college, and that's definitely something that I think a lot of players have experienced. And so during COVID, which was about my sophomore year in college, there was or freshman slash sophomore year, um, there was a period of time where the rules and regulations in the Palo Alto area where Stanford was were so strict you could barely even be um, doing contact drills and all that. So it wasn't the best training situation. So the coach Gunn kind of allowed players, if they had good training opportunities, to go and kind of pursue those. And I had ended up at that point going over to Germany to train there with Cologne, and that's a definitely example of it was. I'm fortunate to have that connection that my dad set up. And when I went there, that was with the second team. I went and I performed very well to the point that they offered me a contract then. And that was during my sophomore year of college, and I decided that it wasn't the right time. Like I went to college for a reason. I wanted to finish my degree and do that. So I rejected it, but it was definitely a flattering thing to be offered a deal over there because it's a big deal. And so kind of after my junior season, they reached back out and they're like, we're still interested. Like, what do you think about it? And at that point, I had made enough progress in my degree where after the spring of that year, it made sense. Like I had all but two classes to go. So I really got thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? This I think will be the best route for me to pursue a professional career, and not just from the world of soccer, but for a life experience, being able to move to a random country, just kind of plot myself in an environment that is very figuratively and literally foreign. Like I didn't know anybody there. I didn't speak the language. And it's just a different culture and all that. I thought that that would be a really good experience for me to challenge myself and grow. And so I was like, why not? Let's go. So I went over there. And it was I still credit that part of my life so far as being one of the most transformative in terms of my mentality and my um, just personal character development of kind of being there for half a year. And as I said, being alone, like not really having any friends or knowing anybody, and kind of just like being fully into soccer, but then also battling that loneliness and kind of putting myself in that uncomfortable position that I then was able to just figure out, because you got to figure out how to be happy on your own. And I think that's a really important skill in life. And I'm someone that's extremely social. Like, I love being around people and friends and family and all that. And that's a beautiful thing. But I think this was an opportunity to kind of develop that side of myself that's like how to be happy when you're alone. And I did. And as for soccer, I felt like I improved a ton in my short time there. So that was a great experience as well. The team we weren't doing very well when I was there. We were kind of even fighting relegation. So it's kind of like a relegation battle, which was a different experience for me. We don't really have that in the US. Um, So that was challenging, and I was also playing a lot of a different position. I'm usually a striker, and I was playing a lot of attacking mid in a league that is kind of brutal, like very physical and fast paced and all that. And in the midfield, it gets really crowded in there. So it was kind of a good opportunity to make quicker decisions on the ball. And I think that was something that really, really prepared me for the next step, which was New York after that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff to unpack there. So I have like a few questions I have, loaded up here, but that's a lot of great information and good to hear that. I love when like soccer experiences can also be personal development, as you were saying,
For
learning how
sure.
to be alone and how to, prosper still while being, by yourself, especially if you're a social person. I think that's a skill that I've been building as well. I think I wanted to like even go back to, I think a thing here that I could probably see as an adjustment you had was like at Bethesda, you could probably count on like one hand maybe how many times you were on coming off the bench for a game, right? You
Mhm.
were, our top player. You were one of the top guys of the club for right 10 plus years. Then you go into a program where likely every single player was in that situation, you know, and your freshman year, you were coming off the bench a lot, still producing, scoring goals, but in a very different role. How is that adjustment in terms of like, for the first time in your career, kind of coming off the bench? And then what kind of like, major lessons did you learn from that? How did that like, adapt to you as like a person and a player? I would love to hear a little bit of that.
Yeah, I mean, the one correction I'd say on that is that I feel like in with the national team, there were a number of times that I did come off the bench.
Fair.
So I had a little bit of experience with that, but um, yeah, as you were saying, it was definitely a different role for me, and I think it's funny because you go into like I went in kind of with confidence, maybe delusion, maybe cockiness that I was like, you know what, like I know how hard it is in college, and I know that it's not normal. But I was like, you know what, I'm gonna start. Like I I feel like I'm gonna be able to do that. I'm gonna earn it, obviously. Like I always knew that, especially at that program, you don't walk in, you're not handed anything. But I had kind of the confidence in myself through everything I accomplished with the at the youth level that I would pretty quickly be able to kind of earn my way into a starting role. And it didn't happen my whole freshman year. Even though I was scoring a lot of goals, it's still, you got to do your time, you know? So I, after after a bit in the freshman year where I was scoring, but it wasn't leading me to start games, there was a point of frustration for sure with that. But then I was also like, you know what? I'm going to embrace this role. Like, I'm still doing really well, and I still can have an impact on the game. I'm getting minutes. So it's like if I'm only playing 5 minutes, if I'm only playing 30 minutes, something like that, I'm going to make the most of those minutes, you know, because every time you get on the field is an opportunity to show yourself. So I shifted my mindset away from being like that starting is an expectation and that's how it should be and I deserve that. Like I didn't feel sorry for myself at all or anything like that. I was just like this is the new reality and this is how I'm gonna succeed in it. And then I attacked it and was able to have success.
Yeah, and that makes sense. The trend that you're talking about, I saw it a lot at Virginia. Kids coming in. I mean, everyone on that team is a good player, but that's
Yeah.
also the thing is everyone on the team is a good player. So a lot of freshmen come in, they think, yeah, I'm going to start right off the bat. I've never been off the bench, and it happens. And learning to adjust, or at the end of the day, if in your case it worked out, but in some, if it doesn't, going to a program that you do think will value you as a player is probably the best route. And it's always an interesting thing to see because I think, people come into a program and they're like, I've been, I'm top drawer 20th. I'm going to start. And the reality is every player is at that level. Everyone's there for a reason. But
Yeah. And
moving
I
on to,
think, sorry, last thing I'd say on that also is I think that's one of the things that the Stanford program especially was very like it was a tactic from them to get the most out of people of that whatever you did, and he said this multiple times, Jeremy Gunn, the coach, he was like, whatever you did before coming here doesn't matter anymore. Like you're here now. Let's see what you can do. And that was a cool experience because you kind of it takes whatever you're doing in that moment, and that's what you're judged off, not the past. You know.
Yeah, that's honestly, a good thing to say. I wish I kind of like heard that a little bit at Virginia. I mean, definitely George had some, George is a world class coach, but I think like that setting that standard is probably one of the best things a coach can do, to be honest. But yeah, I'm also kind of curious, and I don't think you would actually be expecting me to ask you this, but I know Stanford's. You kind of touched on it a bit. Stanford's known for their work, their work rate, press, press, press. I do kind of wonder if you think a different program would have been good for you stylistically. Because when I was playing in the ACC and I saw Virginia, I was thinking that a team like that would be like your ideal style, especially being in a Bethesda program where it's knock the ball, keep the ball. Stanford is very different stylistically. I'm wondering if that was an adjustment. And then if you think it was like beneficial for you long term, if you think, maybe like you would have benefited from being at like a stylistically different program.
Yeah, no, that's a good point to bring up. I think you're right. Like it probably wasn't my ideal or perfect style for the way I play. But I think you can look at that as being a negative, but you can also look at it as a positive because I feel like it really ended up developing a part of my game that not to say that I was lacking like defensive work rate and all that, but it made something that wasn't like my biggest strong suit and made it into that, like it's now at this level, at the professional level, like that's one of the things that I am known for and is something that's brought me a lot of success at the professional level is kind of that relentless work rate. And yeah, that I would say, like, I agree. I think there are programs that I probably would have scored a lot more goals, assists, all that sort of thing, maybe had more personal success from that standpoint. But I think that I was really able to get a lot out of the style that we played at Stanford. And I think another point on that is that every step of my journey, and I think this can be applied to life too, every step of the way, you I don't think you can regret. I think you take whatever experiences you've had, whether you think they're positive or negatives at the time, and you move forward with them and you learn what you can from them, and then you can turn most things into positives at the end of the day. Um, so that's kind of one of the mental frameworks I kind of have for dealing with issues and moving forward and growing.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I'm a firm believer. One of my like main things I say is everything happens for a reason, right? I
Mhm.
was so annoyed about originally playing D3. It turned out to be the best thing that possibly could have happened for me because I
Sure.
got to play every single year. So playing right off the bat rather than potentially having sat on the bench for my entire freshman season was probably the best thing that could ever happen. And
Yep.
everything happens for a reason. But now going into post in terms of like your time in the MLS. So if you could talk a little bit about like, your experience, how you got to NYCFC, your experience, and then, talk us through like the rest and then, kind of where you're at now at Dynamo.
Yeah. So coming from Germany, like honestly, you have a little bit more value and everything. And that's, as I was explaining before, a big reason why I ended up going there. So I was able to get the contract at New York from that. I decided to come back at that point because I was, as I said, I was really enjoying the challenge and I think I grew a lot from it. But I think my dream goal was like get into second team in Germany and maybe just maybe like I get lucky and can find myself in the first team somehow. And I was seeing that that wasn't probably going to happen, and at least it wasn't going to happen for a long time. So I kind of weighed up the options, and I was like, I think being in an MLS environment, um, I think that it gives me a better chance to break through. And also the benefit of being in the US too is nice, especially a city like New York was very special. Um, and so I went there, but I wasn't really expected to probably even play too much my my first year. But I came in like fresh off of being in Germany for half a year. As I said, I think I got a lot better. I also was very locked in, focused, motivated, and I think that just helped me attack the preseason very strongly at New York. And I played, I thought, very well during that. Um, and the thing about the MLS is with the transfer windows and everything, sometimes there people are waiting longer to fill certain roles on the team, um, and different circumstances like that. So they had a very talented player named Talis Magno. He was primarily a winger, but they were thinking they'd try him at striker to start that year. And after a few games, I think that it was clear like he wanted to be on the wing, and they wanted him to be on the wing eventually as well. So it kind of opened up an opportunity for me to. I'd done all the right things, obviously in preseason. Was training well every day to the best I could. Had the right mindset, and um, so after about 7, 8 games into the season, um, it's funny because the week before that, um, I picked up an injury. Like I turned my ankle badly. So the keeper fell on top of it. So I was out like from Saturday to Thursday of that week, and they announced the lineup for each each game day the day before on that Friday. And I hadn't trained all week, and this was for my debut. I just saw my name on the like team sheet for the game against the Revolution the next day, and I didn't expect it. Like I didn't know that that was what they were thinking of doing, and my ankle, to be honest, was still very it wasn't feeling very good, and I was like, oh man, like this is it. Like this is the opportunity that I've always dreamed of ever since I was a little kid. It was like the goal is to become it's funny because at first it was the goal is to become a professional player, but then once you get that, then you're like, okay, the goal is to make a debut, and then it's like, okay, from there it's like get some more minutes, and then it's like score a goal, and then it's there's always you're always pushing to new goals and expectations, stuff like that. But this next step for me, having already signed a professional contract, was to make my debut. And so that was a really exciting moment, and but also a ton of pressure. Kind of going back to the theme of this is like you have a chance. You're starting a game in MLS, and if you don't play well, you probably aren't going to get another opportunity, at least for a long time. And so you pretty much, and you know this going in, like you have to play well, or else you're kind of screwed. Um, and so I went to that game, taped up my ankle, and then I thought I had a very good game. And the coach was very happy with me, kind of said how well I played. And from there, I gained just another level of confidence, I think, in myself that, like, okay, I'm good enough for this level. I can do this. I can succeed. And then from there, I got a few more starts. And then, as I said, the goal kind of changed. It became literally like I need to score a goal. I'm a striker. It's been great to play, but now like to stay in this role and to stick around in this league, you got to score goals. So I didn't in my first 3 starts score, and then I got moved to the bench again for a little bit, and then I knew, as I said, I had to score, so I went into the next game I got in. I was like, I'm gonna change the way I play a little bit. Where before it was like kind of fitting in and connecting my passes, holding it up, and all that, and then um, it was more like I'm gonna shoot. Like I don't care if my teammates get get mad, but I'm gonna take some chances. Um, and I ended up scoring like a game or two later, and then that was another proud moment and another step in the right direction. And I got another goal that year, and some good performances. But then in the summer, they signed more players, and that's kind of a common theme of in MLS. They're always, especially in my position, they're always going to be bringing in new players, um, and you just got to keep performing and controlling what you can control. But sometimes they'll come in and you're not going to play anymore for a while after that. So that kind of happened. I loved my time in New York. I look back on it very fondly, and um, it was a great experience. But then I got a really good offer to go to Israel on loan for a year, and that's where I was excited because I thought it would be a really good chance to get minutes, show what I can do, score goals, and then you're coming from a league that's respected, and then I the goal would be for me to have more respect in MLS and be given kind of more benefit of the doubt, more minutes, and stuff like that. And on top of it, like Tel Aviv, from what I had heard, was an unbelievable city, which it turned out to be. Like on the Mediterranean Sea with the beaches, the culture there, all that was amazing. And more money, all these different factors. I was like, okay, once again, like let's do it. Why not? And been the mindset of what I've had, to go to Germany and then Israel and then Houston and all that. It's been like, why not? So I went over there. I was there for a month, only gotten in 3 games, and I scored 2 goals in the 3 games, but they both got called back, which was crazy. One was like, I guess they called a foul in the build-up. They went to VAR, and I was upset both times. But both I myself and the coaches, the fans, my teammates, I think it felt like I was going to score a lot of goals there, and be successful. Um, and that's when, just after a month, I was there when the Hamas attacks occurred into Israel, and which was kind of a crazy experience because uh, I didn't really know about the conflict probably as much as I should have before I went there. Um, and then just to kind of get thrown into that and woke up like kind of hearing sirens and then missiles coming in and then all that, was kind of a whirlwind. And then about 2 days later, I was back in the United States, and then the loan, like after 1 or 2 weeks, when it wasn't sure how long this would last for, and obviously it's still going on. The loan was canceled, and then I was back to New York, and then for like a week or two before the season ended, and then so that was crazy. And then that off season got traded to Houston, um, and uh, I was hoping that it would be like a lot more opportunity and everything. And I've gotten minutes here and all that, and been able to score a few goals here as well. Um, but it's also been a spot where I haven't played quite as much to advance my career as and done as much as what I would have hoped. But once again, like it's been a great spot in other ways too, and I'm thankful for being here and this step in my career as well. Um, so yeah.
Yeah. Again, a lot of great information there. No, and all those experiences, three different ones, three different stories, but you're going to learn a lot as a player and as a person in each one. I am curious in terms of, because there are a lot of expectations for every player, especially at the professional level. But as a nine, there's one clear cut expectation is put the ball in the back of the net. How
Mhm.
do you feel like with that, especially in a case of Dynamo, right, where you're just not getting as many minutes to actually do what you're meant to do and put the ball in the back of the net? How do you deal with that? Kind of what is the, day to day that you're doing to like kind of mentally, physically kind of overcome that obstacle of just not having as much opportunity?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. But as for what I do is that like training still matters, you know? So like every day we're training and there's no way I'd be able to get to where I have without taking training really seriously. And that's a theme that started way back when we were six playing together through all of the youth days and college and all the teams I've been at. You have to train extremely hard. Because that's how you get to where you want to be, and you still have things that you need to get better at and all those things. So when I'm not getting minutes, I'm still training as hard as I can and controlling what I can control. And that's, I think I mentioned that before, that's just the one of the biggest things you have to do to succeed, because that's all you're capable of, you know, what you can control. All the other stuff I can't. But if I am going to get on the field for a few minutes here and there, and I don't know when that is, whenever you get on the field, I think it's important to attack that as an opportunity. And I try and work as hard as I can and get my try and get myself in spots on the field where I can get opportunities to score. So and then last year it was a little bit of a different scenario, which I hadn't done before. Is at New York at least was playing second team games. So that was in the next pro league. Um, and that's another thing. It's a mental hurdle because I think a lot of guys who are on first team contracts and played MLS minutes and done stuff there, when they get asked to go down to the second team, um, some people don't really take it too seriously or attack it the right way and all that. But I just saw it as another opportunity to hopefully be able to show myself. And I was able to score a lot of goals last year when that was the case. And yeah, kind of the situation in Houston last year was that they ended up having two DP9s on the roster. They planned, which DPs for people who don't know are kind of the big money signings, big money players. So there was one that was here before, who kind of fell out of favor, and then they signed another in the summer. So that they were both strikers playing a one striker system. So it was kind of um, it kind of pushed me to the side for a bit, and that was another adjustment, but um, something that just work through and work hard and training in the second team games, and yeah.
Yeah. And all that makes sense. And especially talking about the second team, right? Like that is an opportunity to showcase yourself. As you said, I've seen experiences, example, former teammate of mine, Leo, right? He's with the second team on Miami, bags a lot of goals. Now he's consistently with the first team, right? So you have to see that as an opportunity to showcase yourself rather than something where it's like they don't think I'm good enough for the first team, they're moving me down, right? Like that is your time to be on the field and actually prove yourself and really get that opportunity. I think something just like an overarching question I think a lot of people would be interested in is the positives that you see of like being a professional athlete, and then like on the flip side, like the hardships and how you're going about that. I think just in my short time playing and like just talking to people as well, everyone's like pro, right? Like it is great, but once the feeling of like signing, the feeling of like making your debut, it lasts for about that one day, maybe a week, right?
Hmm.
An Instagram post goes up, a lot of people reach out, whatever, it's great, but like then you have another step. You're always getting the next step, right?
Yeah.
So curious to hear, obviously there's loads of benefits and positives, and some of the stuff that's like pretty tough, and how you deal with that.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, great point. Um, yeah, I mean the positives are the ones that everybody can see, right? Like when you, as you said, when you make your debut, when you get minutes, when especially when you score goals, um, you can feel on top of the world. You feel like everything's going right, and that goes into the kind of the try not to ride the roller coaster of emotions, because if you did in this sport, you'd be very high sometimes, very low other times. You get kind of got to be successful, stay in the middle. But yeah, I think the lifestyle can be both nice and not nice sometimes, in terms of we train hard in the morning, and you get in early, and then but you're out of the facility in early afternoon, like 2 p.m., something like that. Often you train on the field, do your work in the gym and all that. So that can lead to a lot of free time after that, which is very nice for sure. um, and a lot of guys have other kind of hobbies they do, stuff to fill up that time. But it's not as simple as that, because you're kind of exhausted every day after. Like, you're training really hard, and it's mentally, like, all that goes into it, kind of, the challenges, which I'll get to. Um, it drains you. So that downtime you often need to recover. And it's not like you can be doing stuff on your feet all the time and extend like uh stuff that kind of exhausts the body, because you got to rest up for the next day, because training matters. Like, you got to be playing your best every day, or else your career is gonna be pretty short. Um so that is kind of feeds into the negatives of it, is that there's pressure every single day. It's a performance driven sport and job, where if you're not playing well, if you're not producing, then you are not succeeding, and then you're what you want out of the career probably isn't going to happen. Like, there's a lot of pressure to do well every single game. So that can be pretty exhausting, to be worrying about that sort of thing. Um, I think also all the stuff that isn't in your control, like especially being a player from the U.S. and kind of a younger guy, there there are players that both are have a lot more experience than you from other places, so they're going to get more benefit of the doubt in playing. There's players that are making a lot more money, so they're probably going to play ahead of you. And kind of the stresses about there's a lot of things that are out of your control that make it sometimes tough to get on the field. But being I guess what I would say is that you don't always get what you think you deserve. And if you think that you're some players like tie their worth and kind of personality to how they're playing, and the experiences they're having on the field. So it can be, you really got to not go crazy. You got to take a step back and realize that you're more than just a soccer player. Because one thing's for sure, there's going to be a lot of negative times throughout your career that you have to deal with.
Yeah, and I think that's a great life lesson, even for someone who isn't playing a sport, is that you're more than just an employee, right? You're that individual, and you
Mm-hmm.
can't tie your value as a person to how you're perceived by, a coworker or a boss, etc. You have to be
100%.
confident in yourself, and that what you're doing matters, and that you're doing it to the best of your ability. And sometimes, you're just gonna get, looked at differently, as you're saying, right? Like, it's like they're paying a lot of money for a select player. They're going to have to continually give that player
Yeah.
opportunities, or their money's going down the drain.
Yeah.
So
And that makes sense. It's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people, and you got to just find your ways to deal with these things and not tie all your happiness to what's going on in, as you said, your work and career, which could be anything, not just soccer, but any job.
Yeah. And I think, the whole part here, just for the audience here, I think like the reason why I really want to have you on here was like each experience you had was like so different. Like if Bethesda, right? Like it was like you're expected to, kind of not carry the team, but like you're expected to like score a lot of our goals. And that was the expectation for you since you were like 7 or 8, right?
Yeah.
You're on the US national team. Everyone there is the top of the league. So like, or the top players in the country, right? So you're trying to perform as well as you can to showcase yourself on a national stance. Then you go to Stanford, right? You're coming in as a freshman on a stylistically different team, right? So the expectations kind of shift there. Then you go overseas, right? You're trying to make it in one of the best leagues in the world. So you're kind of starting at the bottom, especially Americans aren't perceived that highly. So different experience there, different expectations. And then you're in the MLS. Well, you're in the MLS, then you go overseas again, and you're at, a very good spot where you're it's looking like it's trending up, and then something out of this world happens. So then you have to come back, and then you're in the MLS. And the reality is a lot of players that play college, they have to prove themselves some like the bottom. So every experience has been different. That's just kind of a wrap up of that part for
Yeah.
the
And
audience. Go ahead.
I think on top of that, kind of when you're speaking about that, it kind of makes me think about the mindset that I've had through all that is just like there's always pressure, you're always going to have to perform. And this, once again, it's funny because you can draw so many comparisons between sports and life, but it's like there's always going to be the pressure to do these things and try and succeed. But you can only control what you can control, once again. And if you do that, and I knew that I was going to work my hardest to be prepared for all these different moments that come. That's why throughout my whole life, like I've trained, I don't know that many people that have trained harder than I have, like not just at practice, but the hours I put in outside of that. And I think from my perspective, if I do all the right things, if I prepare the right way, I train as hard as I can, I eat well, I sleep well, like I make the right decisions and give it my 100%, whatever the outcome is, whether it is scoring all the goals and rising to the occasion and succeeding, or if it's failing and not scoring goals and not playing as well as I should, losing games, all that, it never hurt me quite as hard if I knew that I did the right things to prepare, because that's the name of the game. That's what you have to do, and whatever happens, happens, and you got to live with that.
And that is a great message because I think in your field, you can do all the right things and you might not play. You can get the right sleep, you can do etc., but you still might not perform. But I think that's a good lesson because in the workplace, a lot of times if you do the right things, you will be able to succeed. So I think it's just good to control what you can control and also put in the maximum amount of effort, right? Like people know if they're not putting in
Sure.
enough effort, right? You
Yeah,
know you put in a lot, but like a lot of times, sports or not sports, people fail because they didn't put in enough
for
effort.
sure. And it also it eliminates that stress and worry when you've prepared the right way. And I think so many people live their lives with a ton of stress and worry and anxiety about different things. And I feel like some of that can be solved by just digging in, working hard, and doing the right things where, once again, whatever the outcome is, you can be happy with yourself because you did the right things, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Okay. So wrapping up here with two, like, I guess more fun questions are, I think it would be interesting to hear, especially from all the soccer guys, because you have so many experiences. I mean, you played top universities, you went overseas, you're on the national team. I'm curious to hear your three like favorite soccer memories thus far of your
Ooh,
career. Yeah.
that's a good question.
Could be
So,
anything.
so I always First one, it's kind of funny. So the I always talk about it with some of the other guys who we played with growing up, but there was a point when, if you remember, early on, I was on Potomac, you were on Bethesda.
Yes.
We had
And you guys beat us.
we had this rivalry, and I mean, Bethesda was the reason I ended up going there shortly after. Was they had the reputation of being the best. You know, they were the best team, um, and everybody wanted to beat them, but they usually beat everybody. But my first team was a bunch of just my friends from elementary school and a few other guys that went on to take it seriously as well. But we obviously met in that championship, the Potomac tournament, and we beat you guys. What, 3-1?
Yeah, it was 3-1. It's a good
Nice.
memory from both of
Yeah,
us.
and I I got my hat trick in that game. So I remember that being like one of my earliest really good memories from soccer. And my dad and mom still talk about it. My dad was a part-time coach in that team, so I think he was proud of that one as well. But so that was one. I guess going in order, um, my first national team call up, I think that was a really big, important step for me. I think I'm gonna have more than three, by the way.
We're good.
Three
Yeah.
moments. But yeah, that first national team camp I think um was really special because obviously it's a big deal to be recognized as one of the best in the country. And but this reminds me of what I didn't quite expand on when we first were talking about the youth, kind of my mindset being a youth player is that while that was great, like to get the recognition and people talking about me, stuff like that, I think what helped me continue to succeed and reach all my goals was remembering that none of this actually mattered that much. You know, like you could get ranked whatever the fifth best player in the country, or you could be a national team player. People could be talking about you, even like writing articles at that age. But that wasn't my goal. Like I hadn't achieved anything yet. And you see some of these guys who were like the best players in the youth days, and they never were able to make it professionally. Um, so I think that was one thing Philip Jow especially really helped, and my dad helped instill in me was that you haven't done anything yet. Keep going, keep working hard. You got to do that every day, you know? So that's kind of what I wanted to say earlier on the youth stuff. Um, but as for other great memories, I think in my professional career, the one that uh, I think my two goals in New York really come to mind. One was that first goal that I scored, my first professional goal, because I feel like, as I said, it was a new challenge. I had been playing, but I hadn't scored yet. And that was the moment that really proved to me that I could succeed at the level, um, because I had already overcome not scoring and the pressure of that. And then I kind of rose to the occasion and got that goal. And it also helped. It was on my birthday too, so that was kind of a special moment.
Against Orlando, right?
Against Orlando, yeah. So that was a really cool moment for me. Oops,
You're
sorry.
good.
Um, and then my second goal in New York uh, was also a big moment because it was a 90 something minute to tie the game against Columbus, who ended up going on to win that year. And Yankee Stadium is just such a cool place. Obviously, some people knock it for having soccer games there, but it's still just a historic and really um, cool place to play. And it had uh, as many I think 30 something thousand fans there that day. And it was just a really cool moment to score there. Um, so yeah, those are probably my biggest memories that I look back on so far, and that I smile. You can see in my face, like
Yeah.
I'm smiling just thinking about them, and I think those ones will stick with me for the rest of my life. Just as proud moments that all kind of validated the hard work that I put in. Because as we talked about, sometimes you don't get the recognition for all the work that you put in, and the success doesn't come, and that's normal. But then these moments that they do, um, it just makes it that much sweeter. And scoring goals with a stadium packed like that is probably an experience that is comparable to a drug, like it's indescribable, so
Yeah.
special moments for sure.
Yeah, and I think the viewers, especially, I mean, I was interested to hear what you were going to pick. I actually thought you were going to say the one where you scored at DC and then celebrated with your.
That one too. I guess I wasn't thinking of that. I didn't quite finish, I guess, with my chronological order, but yeah, that was also special given my whole family was there,
Yeah,
and got to celebrate with my mom, who has been a big support in this whole thing. My mom, dad, grandparents, family. Um, so yeah, that was a really cool moment too.
yeah. And then a last question here. So two-part question. One, I know we've kind of talked about like everything happens for a reason, etc. But is there one thing in your entire career that you would have changed as one? And then two is just a general, like we've talked about it, but a lot of people we don't know. What are you like most excited for and looking for in your career? As that continues, what are you trying to get out of it the most? And obviously not just like, scoring more goals, trying to get more minutes, etc. Like kind of the feelings that you get from it. And then, you know, even Ronaldo is going to have to retire at some point. So like, what are you looking to do after you play or after
Yes.
you're playing? My bad.
No, these are great questions. You've been asking a lot of good questions. I guess, um, man, with the first one, you say that one more time.
If there was anything you could change from your soccer career, like one
Yeah.
thing, what would it be?
Okay. I guess this is a little bit of a cop out answer, but I think I mentioned this before, is that I really don't think you can look back on things and want to have changed them, because they all contribute to where you're at right now.
Yes.
And I'm really happy with where I'm at right now. And I think living with regret or negativity about the past, it isn't a good thing, because it can mess up the future. And the future is only you're only able to get what you want out of your future by focusing on the given moment. So that's where I kind of like to spend most of my time, is day to day, focusing on like what I can do, and being thankful for what I have, and all those sort of things, and being as happy as I can be. So I don't think I would regret any part of the journey, to be honest.
Yeah.
Maybe you can look back on games and regret like the way you shot the ball or the run, all that. But that's whatever you decided in the given moment you thought was the best course of action. So that's why that preparation is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Totally agree with you on that. And I, it's not a cop out answer. I think it's a good one. I was just seeing if there was anything, because like one thing that I always thought about like my career wise was like, right, realistically, I was fine at that position, but playing center back for that long was probably
oh, you know
not
what?
ethical for me. Right. Like, but I actually think about it like years later, I hadn't played winger like since I was like in U12. But like
Yeah,
one of the things that helped me was like understanding how like outside backs and center backs operate by playing those two positions for so long made it such an easy adjustment because I knew like tells. And so
yeah,
like I was so angry about that like playing that position for so long because it's like I'm not gonna play center back in college.
Yeah.
Then in the future, it kind of like everything happens for a reason. I think that was like
Yeah.
one of the biggest reasons why I was able to adjust that position so quickly.
No, I guess I could say that choosing a position that it might be the hardest to make it at could be
Yeah.
regret.
Okay.
But
Fair. Yeah.
at the same time, like I've it's been a blessing, all of it. I'm really happy with how it's all turned out, and um, the amazing experiences I've been able to have through soccer. As I said, it's brought me some of my best friends. I've gotten to travel all around the world. Um, I just have so many fond memories that I look back on and smile. Some as simple as the day to day trainings at Bethesda when we just had all of our friends there. Um, Others more prominent, like the goals you score in these stadiums. But all of it, like soccer's brought, and then now just having it be a full time job is pretty special in itself. But soccer has brought me so much, and there's so much to be thankful for. And I guess that goes into the next part of your question that you asked is what I want out of it, and I just want to keep like making the best memories I can, and the taking more and more experiences away from it that will serve me well for the rest of my life, because I feel like that's a big part of what life is about, just collecting experiences and happy moments and times with friends, family, all those sort of things, and that you can look back on and be happy about. And I guess, yeah, what I want to continue with soccer, I want to keep having adventures like I have, and playing the right way, training the right way, and just getting the most out of it that I can, I think.
Okay. And then how about after? Because you're gonna have to retire at some point.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I think we talked about it a little bit.
Yes.
I don't know exactly. I'm starting to think about it a little bit. I think it's always good to start thinking about those things. But I think at Stanford I double majored. One was kind of a liberal arts degree, and then the other was psychology. So I definitely have some interest in that psychology field. I think being a therapist or psychologist could be a really cool thing in terms of directly helping people through their problems and their mindset and how to succeed. And being happy. I think that's a really important thing that I could see myself enjoying doing, or I could see myself doing similar to what you do, the whole consulting or finance route. So it's kind of opposite spectrums there, opposite sides of the spectrum. But I think I need to continue kind of just learning about different fields and all that to make the best decision. Um, I don't know if you're going to ask if I wanted to be in soccer at all or something like that. But I wouldn't rule it out of obviously my dad's an agent. I have that route that I could potentially go into, where a lot of players go into coaching, stuff like that. But there is part of me that I've given so much to soccer, and so much time and energy has been focused on it, that I think when I do end, it could be cool to focus on something else as well.
Yeah. And I know we talked about that, and just wrapping up here, I think one of like the kind of beauties of life that I'm in right now is like, as you said, we both put in so much energy to playing that you actually like, when you stop playing, you find stuff out about yourself that you maybe like pushed off and or never actually got the time to find out because you were so focused on school and soccer, like you didn't
For
have time
sure.
for anything else. So I do agree with you. Like it is interesting to like see what you can do in like another part of your life afterwards. And, I know we talked about it, but I thought it would be interesting for like people to hear that. But
Yeah.
yeah, great to have you on here. And I think the one thing I'll kind of say is, continue to enjoy and work hard every day. Cause I think you probably maybe don't know this, but like us that aren't playing anymore, we really do enjoy watching our friends who are still playing,
And
especially
thank you.
yeah, especially someone that you grew up with. Like of course I
Yeah.
have my guys from Virginia, etc. Like people that are still playing, but it's good to see someone who you grew up with playing because you're probably one of the only people left that I know, at least that like from Bethesda that like is still playing. So
Thank you, bro. Yeah, and I also I appreciate you having me on. I think it's a really cool project you're doing here, and it's been cool to also see your transition out of soccer into the workforce as well. And I appreciate. I'm sure you'll be more help for me once I make that transition someday too. But yeah, it's cool to kind of have all the memories we've had throughout the years and be able to talk here about them now. And
yeah.
so
Look at
thank
that
you.
helmet game. Hey, you gotta erase that one from your memory.
No, that was a good one. That one's sticking around.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, it was nice to have you on here. I hope everyone enjoys this episode. Thanks, Gabe.
Hey, thank you.